and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well, and thank you so much for coming back and joining me. If you haven't subscribed already, please hit the subscribe button. That would be great. That would really help my channel. And of course, press the like button. If you want to leave a comment, I'm here to help. This is what I made the channel for. I want to share my experience on the keto diet and my whole lifestyle. So today I really thought that one thing I need to do is talk about the things that I wish I knew when I first started keto. I did do a lot of research. I think for me, I took it in stages. So initially I started fasting, and then I started to do things like when I broke my fast, I wouldn't include any carbohydrates. I know for some people they want to just dive straight in, they want to go cold turkey, or some people would rather take it gradual. I think you can do both. I just went for it basically. And even though I did lots of research, I would say I was still caught out by a few things, because it is a massive change on your body. It's a massive thing to do. And the reason that the keto diet is so different is that your body is literally burning a different sort of fuel. You're trying to transition from using carbohydrates or glucose as your fuel for every function in your body pretty much, to using fat. That is a big ask of your brain, of your body, of all the functions that go along with it. Right, so number one, I would say, is the absolute most important thing. Before you start it, during, just the most important thing. And you've heard it, I'm sure, but I bet you haven't taken it in. You need to take electrolytes. You need to up your sodium and salt if you are doing a low carb diet. If you're going from carbs to eating fats, dropping your carbs to any sort of drastic amount, you're gonna lose so much water weight initially. All your minerals will go along with that. You need to make sure you're replenishing them. If you don't do that, you are going to feel like bad. So when I first started, I knew that you had to take electrolytes, but you know, people think, oh, I'll just take a multivitamin, or I'll just take an iron tablet. That is not what we're talking about. We're talking about potassium, magnesium, sodium. Electrolytes are all linked to your salt, your sodium, and basically however high your sodium is will depend on how many minerals you can hold on to. Along with that, salt and sodium have the electrolytes in them, so magnesium and potassium, chloride, and I don't know the other ones. But I would say I didn't eat a lot of carbs necessarily, but I was obviously running on carbs. That's what it can only be one or the other. I dropped my carbs obviously, and I felt like I'd been hit by a bus. And the reason for that is because I didn't have enough salt, and I wasn't able to hold on to my electrolytes, and I wasn't supplementing with magnesium. Before you start the keto diet, or if you're already on it and you haven't got this yet, please go and get a good supplement of magnesium and potassium, but mainly magnesium. Make sure you have a good quality salt, Himalayan pink salt or sea salt, real sea salt it has to be, not table salt. Please don't ever use table salt. It is just full of rubbish and it's not going to help with your levels. I think that this is where most people fall initially, and this is where people have their first hurdle. I see a lot of people who sort of talk badly of the keto diet. They say, oh, I tried cutting out carbs before, but I felt like rubbish, or I felt really tired. And yes, because your body is trying to transition. So if you don't give it the right supplementation and you don't give it the right amount of time, then you're never going to get to the other side. I think, yeah, it's really important to do that. And please make sure you seriously do some good research before you start. Second thing I wish I knew is that when I was experiencing electrolyte deficiencies, things like you can get muscle cramps, and also I had like a tingling sensation that can also be linked to magnesium and potassium imbalances. What I wish I knew now is that the most nutrient-rich foods for things like magnesium, potassium, iron, lots of different nutrients, are actually the most highest in animal foods. So for some reason, whenever you're looking at how can I get more magnesium, it will come up with things like leafy greens. And while that is still great, the amount that you have to eat to be able to absorb a good amount of magnesium and for it to be in the right form is a lot harder for your body to process. Whereas if you eat, say for instance, a steak or organ meat or seafood, that is so much more bioavailable for your body to break it down, for your body to absorb it. The form that it comes in, it doesn't need to be converted, or usually if it does need to be converted, it's much more of a simpler process. So when I was thinking that I had a low potassium or low magnesium levels, I was eating more leafy greens, and I can tell you now, it didn't do a single thing. The only thing that I found that helped was increasing my salt intake. People will say I put so much salt on everything, but for how many hours of the day are you not eating anything? That means you're not taking in any salt. So I would honestly put salt in your water. Put it in your water, you won't notice it. Put just a little bit in there. That also is one thing that helped me a lot with working out at the beginning. Put salt in your tea, in your coffee. Next thing that I wish I knew, which I definitely know now, is that fat is not a free-for-all. So yes, especially at the beginning, especially for the first few months, or at very least the very first few weeks, you need to be eating a good amount of fat. You need to be able to let your body adapt. You need to be able to run on the fat, obviously. I see a lot of people overloading on the fats and being scared of protein. At the beginning, I did go for very, very, very high fat and moderate protein and obviously very low carbs. I did always stick to about 20 grams of carbs a day. After a while, I sort of noticed that it wasn't working the same, and sometimes you do just need to have a little play around. And what I found is that instead of me focusing on trying to hit a fat macro percentage or grams, your body has enough fat on it, and it's like anybody has enough fat on them to be able to use this as ketones. The macros that most people are following is actually the macros for people that have things like epilepsy, but a lot of mental benefit, rather than actually losing the weight or just getting healthy overall. If you're eating 60% fat, the rest can fill in with protein, and obviously try to keep your carbs 5 to 10%. If you're not eating enough protein, then actually you're much more prone to muscle wastage. Now, if your muscles are being broken down, your metabolism actually is going to get slower. So while the scale might go down, you're actually going to find it harder to lose weight on the same amount of calories that you eat, because your body will adjust and actually your body will get slower, rather than improving your metabolism, gaining muscle, and also still being satisfied. Protein is very filling, and so is fat. Please don't be scared of protein. I reckon that my protein levels were too low for quite a long period of time. Do focus more on trying to hit your protein rather than trying to hit your fat. The fat will naturally fill in the gaps. You have to eat a considerable amount of protein to actually for it to be turned into glucose, and even if it is turned into glucose, that does not mean that it's going to kick you out of ketosis. Our body naturally has to have some sort of glucose in it to be able to function. I believe our brain still runs partly on glucose. That's just natural. We don't have to be taking in glucose or sugar or carbs in order to make that. Just remember that fat is a lot more calories, and if you're not losing weight on a very high fat, mainly centralized diet, then that might be why. So definitely have a little play around with that. If you are just starting, I think eat as much fat as you feel comfortable with. You don't have to go crazy with it, but just fill in the gaps with the fat. The other thing I wish that I knew before is this sort of stems off of the electrolyte imbalances. So if you're not sleeping right, or you're actually waking up very, very early, or you kind of feel too alert, I would describe it as, this is definitely a sign of low magnesium. Obviously, I would recommend trying to eat more magnesium-rich foods, but if that doesn't help, then definitely get a good magnesium supplement. I would recommend not the magnesium citrate, because that doesn't seem to help with things like sleep. Next is actually a mistake that I look back on now and I realise what I did. And I do see a lot of other people making this same mistake, and I just want to help people out and let them know that, you know, it's easily done. In the US, they basically break down the nutritional information differently to us. If you've heard the term net carbs, this actually means carbohydrates minus the fibre. In the UK, and I believe in all of Europe, we already do that on the packaging. It is already broken down for you. So when you look at packaging in the UK and you see the carbohydrate listed, that is already the net carbs. In the US, they have to subtract that off themselves. So they have to determine what the net carbs are. Please don't get that confused. The other tip involved with that, and I've actually had a few people say the same, if you're tracking, when you put it into a tracker, like food diary counters, carb counters, make sure you are actually choosing the product that is based in a UK supermarket. So for me, if I can't find that specific product, even if it's a carrot or a bit of broccoli, make sure you are selecting one that's from Tesco or from Asda. Don't get mixed up with Aldi, because Aldi is in the US as well, so you might end up with nutritional information that is still wrong. If I do actually use any sort of Aldi product, I make sure that I put in the name that it will have on the packaging, so it won't be called an Aldi, it will say something like specially selected. So if you make sure you're doing that when you're tracking, you will notice that your carb count overall is significantly lower. So for me, when I first started, I think I didn't track initially, but then when I did, I started to actually look at my carb count at the end of the day and subtract the fibre off on the list of all of the nutritional information on my phone. And obviously this was wrong. It was already done for me. So I thought I must have probably been eating closer to like 50 grams of net carbs a day. I hope that makes sense. Obviously, if you're a bit confused, you're welcome to message me on Instagram, or you can, of course, leave a comment and I will get back to you. Another thing that I did when I first started was basically anything I saw on the packaging that had more than 1 gram or even half a gram of carbs, I thought I couldn't have. That is not the case. Some people call it dirty keto, where as long as it fits into your carb count, people will eat it. I personally don't like doing that, because I think that keto is all about the health benefits and excluding these products or food ingredients that actually cause inflammation and actually aren't beneficial to us. Initially, I would be going around the supermarket and pick things up and think, oh, you know, like double cream. Pick up the cream and I'd see per 30 millilitres or per 100 grams, it was like 1.1 grams of carbs. I'd be like, oh no, I can't have it, it's got carbs in it. You can have some carbohydrates. They doesn't just have to come from the vegetables. And I think another point stemming off from that is it's so much more important to not be scared of eating a little bit over your carbohydrate limit in terms of vegetables, rather than trying to fit in these keto snacks, which are net carbs. That's all very well, but if you're happy to fit that in, then eating a little bit of extra broccoli is obviously going to be better for you than trying to fit in these little treats. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for a bit of convenience and having these options. I think now the UK is really starting to tag along with it, and it's really great to see some actually clean, keto-friendly options there. Don't worry so much about eating a bit too much broccoli. That isn't going to kick you out of ketosis, let's be honest. And I think lastly is just to focus on ingredients, but don't be put off. So when I first started, I thought that everything I had to eat had to be grass-fed, it had to be organic and things like that. And yes, that would be absolutely great. But that isn't actually part of the keto diet. You can do the keto diet however you want. So if you can only afford, you know, basic meat from the store, then that is absolutely fine. You do what suits you, and you do what you can afford, because it needs to be sustainable. You're not going to want to keep to it if you can't afford it. Eating grass-fed, eating organic, eating all these different terms isn't part of the keto diet necessarily. Neither is intermittent fasting or fasting. That is completely separate. If you want to do it, that's also up to you. It usually kind of goes hand in hand, and technically when you are fasting, you are in ketosis. Yeah, there's just so many little misconceptions and little tips and tricks. I hope that I'm not stating the obvious here, but I think this is going to be helpful to someone, and these are genuinely things that, you know, I wish I knew. Let me know what you think of this type of video. I don't really like just sitting down and talking. I quite like filming, you know, the food, sort of having different scenes going on, but sometimes it is necessary to just sit down and have a little chat and go through some things that I think are important. Let me know if you fancy seeing a video about kind of my response to the hate that keto gets and the common myths that keto has around it, because I would love to address some statements that have been put out there, which, you know, I won't go into it now, but let me know if you'd like to see a video like that, because I would quite enjoy doing that. And if there's anything else that you want to see, please leave a comment. It's so helpful. Every week I'm always a little bit stuck on what to film. Any recommendations, any advice is really, really, really helpful. So there we have it. Thank you so much for watching. Again, please do hit the subscribe button, give it a like if you enjoyed it, and if you fancy sharing it with anyone else that you know is thinking about starting the keto diet, then hopefully I can help them out as well. Yeah, so I will see you very soon. Bye bye.